That ambulance isn't getting through. I'm through our strike time.
Then you'll have to lift my son yourself.
The paramedic was shouting for someone to move a vehicle, his voice tearing through the cul-de-sac like a siren without power. I knew that tone. I'd used it myself on scenes where seconds mattered. I was still in my uniform when I turned the corner and saw Donna Whitmore's SUV parked sideways at the entrance, clean and deliberate, blocking everything. My son was dying 200 yards away. They were already carrying him when I reached the driveway, not inside the ambulance, on foot. A small body wrapped tight, oxygen tank bouncing against a responder's hip as they ran. The woman who killed my son stood by her driver's door with her arms crossed, demanding paperwork, demanding authority, demanding control while Lucas's heart failed behind her. I said the thing that came out before thought could catch it. I told her she had to move. She told me rules were rules. She said emergency vehicles ruined neighborhood standards. I remember the calm that settled over me then. The cold kind that comes when training overrides shock. I'd spent 12 years documenting emergencies for courtrooms. I knew exactly what 8 minutes meant. If you've ever watched a moment stretch until it snaps something inside you, then hit subscribe now. I'm Michael Rivera. I was a paramedic supervisor in Meadowbrook Commons, trained to protect life and record truth. I'd chosen this house because it sat 8 minutes from Children's Hospital. I'd promised my wife, Sarah, as she bled out bringing our son into the world, that I'd keep Lucas safe. The committee chair didn't know that. The HOA official didn't care. Donna Whitmore glanced at me like I was another resident breaking her aesthetic order. The paralegal smirked and asked if I had authorization for an ambulance to enter the cul-de-sac. I felt my hands curl, then unclench. I looked past her, up at the nursery window that faced the street, the one where I waved every time I came home. The security camera above it blinked red. Watching, recording. Behind me, a neighbor whispered my name. Somewhere, a siren wailed too late. The responders brushed past Donna's bumper and into the house with equipment they should never have been carrying that far. I followed, every step heavy, every sound too loud. The smell of antiseptic mixed with pine from the trees lining the street. The HOA official's voice faded behind us, still arguing, still insisting. Inside, the room felt small. Monitors screamed. Hands moved, commands snapped. I knew the choreography, and I knew when it was failing. When the doctor finally looked at me, I saw it before he spoke. Lucas was gone. I went back outside because I couldn't breathe. Donna Whitmore was still there. The woman who killed my son checked her phone and complained about traffic flow. I stared at the camera above the window again and understood something important. The watchful eye had seen everything. Every refusal. Every second stolen. Where are you watching from right now? Because wherever you are, imagine a neighbor deciding rules mattered more than your child's heartbeat. Imagine knowing the proof existed, blinking red above a window, waiting for you to be ready. I wasn't ready yet. I was still a father, holding a silence where a laugh should have been. But the training didn't leave me. The promise didn't either. And as the sun dipped behind the trees of Meadowbrook Commons, I knew this wasn't the end of Lucas's story. It was the beginning of Donna Whitmore's. Donna Whitmore didn't leave after the ambulance pulled away. The board chair stayed planted at the cul-de-sac entrance, arms folded, chin lifted, as if the street belonged to her and grief was just another inconvenience to manage. I watched from my driveway, numb, while neighbors hovered at a distance, unsure whether to approach a father who'd just lost everything or the enforcer in crimson who looked ready to write citations. She spoke first, of course. Not an apology. Not even silence. The HOA official told the first responding officer that she'd acted within community guidelines. She explained that emergency vehicles needed authorization to preserve traffic flow. She said it calmly, confidently, like she was reciting policy instead of justifying a death. The officer listened, eyes hard, then walked away to take statements. Donna Whitmore smoothed her blazer and checked her phone. I went back inside the house that no longer felt like mine. The living room smelled like antiseptic and sweat. Toys lay where Lucas had left them that morning. I sat on the edge of the couch and waited for the shock to wear off. It didn't. It settled instead, heavy and sharp. Outside, I could still hear the tyrant in heels talking, her voice carrying through the open window, already rewriting the story. By nightfall, word spread. People came by quietly, not with casseroles yet, with questions. Tom Chen stood on my porch with his wife, eyes red. He told me about the fire truck Donna Whitmore blocked last year, how flames climbed while she argued about clearance and curb appeal. They'd never filed a complaint. They were tired. They were scared. They thought it was over. Mrs. Patterson's son came next. He spoke slowly so his mother could follow along. He reminded me of the stroke, the delayed ambulance, the way Donna had insisted the street remain clear until the board approved access. His mother nodded, struggling for words she'd lost that day. The clipboard queen had stood there then too, hands on hips, satisfied. Each story landed like a blow, a pattern formed, ugly and undeniable. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was habit. Control exercised until someone paid the price. Tonight, that someone was my son. Late, I stepped back outside. Donna Whitmore was finally getting into her SUV. I asked her one question. Why didn't she move? She laughed, short and sharp, and said I was being emotional. She said rules existed for a reason. She said if exceptions were made, chaos followed. Then she drove off, headlights sweeping across the nursery window as she passed. I stood there long after, staring at the red blink of the camera above the glass. It hadn't stopped recording when the ambulance was blocked. It hadn't stopped when Lucas was carried out. It hadn't stopped when the woman who killed my son dismissed it all as procedure. The watchful eye kept time better than any witness. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table and wrote down names, times, phrases Donna had used. I wasn't building a case yet. I was surviving. But the training crept back in, quiet and relentless. Documentation mattered. Patterns mattered. Truth mattered. Somewhere between midnight and dawn, the grief shifted. It didn't lessen, it focused. I realized Donna Whitmore wasn't finished. The board chair never stopped when challenged by silence. She escalated. She punished. And if she could block an ambulance, she could do worse after. When the sun rose over Meadowbrook Commons, lighting the tree-lined street she claimed to protect, I understood something else. This neighborhood wasn't just where Lucas died. It was where the truth lived. And the truth had witnesses. Grace Palmer waited at the curb in her minivan, engine running, headlights off. I saw her before she saw me, shoulders hunched forward, hands gripping the steering wheel like she was bracing for impact. Donna Whitmore's house sat dark across the street, the committee chair finally gone quiet for the night. That silence was what brought Grace out. She rolled her window down an inch when I approached, eyes darting past me toward the cul-de-sac entrance. "I shouldn't be here," she said. Her voice shook, and she pressed her lips together like she could trap the words inside if she tried hard enough. I didn't tell her she should stay. I didn't tell her anything. I just waited. Grace exhaled slowly, shoulders rising and falling. She nodded toward the nursery window without looking at it. "I saw everything," she said. "I was taking the trash out when the ambulance arrived. I heard them yelling. I heard Donna refusing." Her fingers left the wheel long enough to rub at her wrists, red marks already forming. The enforcer in crimson had that effect on people. Fear lived in the body first. Grace swallowed and kept going. I wanted to tell them to move her. I wanted to scream, but my phone rang. She glanced down at it like it might ring again. It was Maya. Her daughter's name hung between us. Grace's shoulders folded inward as she spoke, posture collapsing under the weight she carried. She was home alone. Her blood sugar dropped last month. We needed an ambulance then. Grace shook her head. I kept thinking, if I cross Donna, if I make her angry, what happens when it's Maya? I watched her hands tremble, the keys jangling softly in the ignition. This wasn't cowardice. It was survival math. The tyrant in heels had trained the neighborhood to calculate risk like this. Grace reached into the passenger seat and pulled out a spiral notebook, edges worn. She didn't hand it to me yet. She just held it, knuckles white. "These are meeting notes," she said. "Not the official minutes. Mine." The clipboard queen had loved meetings, loved control, loved the sound of her own certainty. Grace had recorded it all, quietly, faithfully. "She bragged," Grace whispered. "Said she controlled emergency access. Said she knew the law better than anyone because she was a paralegal. We warned her, over and over." Grace finally looked at me then, eyes shining. She laughed. A car passed at the end of the street. Grace flinched, pulling the notebook closer to her chest. "I'm scared," she admitted. "She retaliates. She files complaints. She makes life impossible." Across the street, Donna Whitmore's porch light flicked on, then off. The board chair was still watching. Grace inhaled, steadying herself. When Maya asked me tonight if your baby died because nobody helped, her voice broke. She pressed her forehead to the steering wheel and stayed there until the moment passed. Then she straightened, resolve hardening. I can't pretend anymore, she said. She extended the notebook toward me, hands shaking but deliberate. I'll tell the truth, whatever it costs. I took it gently. The paper was warm from her grip. Thank you, I said, and meant it in the deepest way I knew. Grace nodded, already reaching for the window button. Be careful, she said. She won't stop. I stepped back as she pulled away, taillights disappearing down the street Donna claimed to own. I stood alone beneath the nursery window, notebook in hand, the red camera light blinking above me. Grace's fear had crossed a line tonight. So had mine. The woman who killed my son still believed silence protected her. She was wrong. The citation arrived 2 mornings later, tucked into my mailbox like junk mail. Same envelope Donna Whitmore used for violations, heavy cream paper with the HOA seal pressed deep, as if authority needed texture. I stood at the curb holding it while sprinklers hissed along the street she claimed to protect. The committee chair had impeccable timing. The first page fined me $500 for an unauthorized memorial display. Flowers, stuffed animals, a handwritten card from a neighbor's kid. The clipboard queen had measured grief and found it non-compliant. The second page was worse. $250 for unauthorized emergency vehicle presence. The ambulance. My son's last chance. I didn't hear her approach. The tyrant in heels made no sound until she was beside me. Red blazer crisp, hair perfect, smile practiced. Donna Whitmore didn't offer condolences. She offered a pen. Sign here to acknowledge receipt, she said, voice pleasant, efficient. I asked her if she'd watched the footage yet. She blinked, then shrugged. That camera? The paralegal waved a hand toward the nursery window. Security doesn't override bylaws. I felt heat rise, then settle. Training again. Control first. You fined me for an ambulance, I said. The HOA official sighed like a teacher correcting a slow student. Rules apply to everyone, she replied, even during personal tragedies. Personal tragedies. She said it like a weather delay. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. Pay within 10 days, the board chair continued, or the lien process starts. I'd hate for this to get messy. Across the street, a curtain twitched. Someone was watching. Donna Whitmore knew it and loved it. Power performed best with an audience. I folded the papers and asked her one more time to explain why she hadn't moved. The enforcer in crimson tilted her head. Emergency vehicles create chaos, she said. If we allow exceptions, property values suffer. I looked at the mailbox, dented where Lucas used to bang his toy truck. My son died, I said. She nodded once, curt. I'm aware. That was it. No apology. No hesitation. The woman who killed my son stepped back, heels clicking. Already done. I'll expect payment, she added, then turned toward her house. I stood there long after she left, citation edges cutting into my palm. Grace's notebook felt heavier in my pocket. Inside, Donna's laughter sat inked beside warnings ignored. The pattern tightened. By afternoon, neighbors came quietly, not with stories this time, with anger. Tom Chen shook his head at the fine. Mrs. Patterson's son swore under his breath. Nobody spoke loudly. Donna Whitmore heard loud. I went inside and placed the citation beside the spiral notebook. 2 documents from different worlds, both proving the same thing. Control without conscience. Authority without limits. That evening, I sat beneath the nursery window and replayed the day in my head. The sprinkler's rhythm sounded like a clock. 8 minutes. I wrote down the time the citation was delivered. I wrote down her words exactly. Personal tragedies. Rules apply. The camera blinked red above me, watching, recording. I realized the citation wasn't a threat. It was a mistake. Donna Whitmore had put her indifference on paper. She doubled down after my son's death, and paper, unlike grief, lasts. When the sun set over Meadowbrook Commons, I slid the envelope into a folder labeled simply Donna. The woman who killed my son had given me another piece of herself. I was done waiting. I didn't watch the footage right away. I carried the spiral notebook to my desk and set it beside the citation, then sat there until night pressed against the windows. When I finally opened the security app, my hand shook once and then steadied, training again. Breathe, observe, document. The camera above Lucas's nursery window pulled the street into frame. Clear, wide, unforgiving. Time stamped to the second. The ambulance entered the cul-de-sac and stopped short, lights flashing against the trees. Donna Whitmore's SUV sat crosswise at the entrance, positioned with intention, blocking everything. The board chair stepped out, phone in hand, red blazer bright as a warning flag. Audio crackled. A paramedic asked her to move, polite first, then urgent, then loud. I recognized the cadence. I'd used it when scenes tipped toward disaster. The enforcer in crimson shook her head and raised a hand. She asked for authorization. She asked for paperwork. She said rules mattered. I scrubbed forward. 30 seconds. 1 minute. 2. A second medic pointed down the street toward my house. The clipboard queen followed his finger, saw the address, and didn't flinch. She stood her ground. At 3 minutes, a responder stepped closer, voice breaking through protocol. Donna Whitmore laughed. Not loud, just enough to register. I paused the video and wrote the time. 3 minutes, 12 seconds. I wrote the phrase she used. Proper HOA authorization. Exact words mattered. I hit play. At 4 minutes, the medic's voice changed. That sound doesn't come often. It comes when options collapse. He turned away from the ambulance and grabbed the oxygen tank. Another grabbed the defibrillator. They ran. The paralegals stayed put. I watched them disappear down the street, carrying what should have rolled to my door. At 5 minutes, Donna Whitmore checked her phone. At 6, she waved at someone out of frame. At 7, she finally moved her SUV, slow and satisfied, like the decision belonged to her alone. I stopped the video when the responders came back into frame, carrying Lucas. I knew the rest. I'd lived it. I leaned back and closed my eyes. Then I opened the statute on my other screen. North Carolina law was clear. Blocking emergency vehicles wasn't a violation. It was a felony. Obstruction of emergency services. No gray. No aesthetic exception. 8 minutes wasn't delay. It was recklessness. I rewound and watched again, this time with the notebook open. I logged times. Verbatim quotes. Body language. I noted when the ambulance arrived, when Donna refused, when responders abandoned the vehicle. I wrote until my hand cramped. This wasn't grief anymore. This was evidence. At the end, I clipped a 30-second segment. Just enough. Arrival, refusal, running on foot. I didn't post it. Not yet. I saved it twice and backed it up. Chain of custody mattered. I stepped outside and looked up at the nursery window. The red light blinked back. The watchful eye had done its job. Donna Whitmore had committed a crime on camera and believed no one would use it. Inside, the folder labeled Donna grew thicker. I stood there longer, listening to the street settle, replaying her posture, the pauses, the choices. This wasn't panic, it was preference. She chose control. She chose delay. She chose herself. The truth felt heavy but clean. I zipped the backups, labeled the files, and set reminders. Tomorrow, I would speak to people who understood evidence. Tonight, I let the recording exist, waiting. I drove to the cemetery before sunrise, the road empty and gray, the air sharp with pine. Sarah's headstone sat beside the smaller one, Lucas's name carved too soon beneath hers. I knelt and touched the stone, letting the cold settle my hands. Donna Whitmore hadn't been there, but she was everywhere in my head. The committee chair's voice replayed with rules and standards, while the truth lay silent at my feet. I told Sarah I had tried. I told Lucas I was sorry. Then I told them both I would finish what I started, because the woman who killed my son would not hide behind bylaws forever. Morning light crept in, steady, unforgiving, and patient, like time itself watching. After the cemetery, I stopped at the hospital parking deck and sat with the engine off. Children's Hospital rose quiet and pale, a promise I had chosen with care. Donna Whitmore had mocked that choice, saying proximity invited sirens. The enforcer in crimson never understood risk. She managed appearances. I reviewed the footage timestamps again, then the dispatch logs, then the statute. The clipboard queen's confidence collapsed under facts. 8 minutes wasn't subjective. It was recorded. I wrote a timeline, clean and linear, the way prosecutors prefer. Grief stayed, but purpose took the wheel. I would not argue feelings. I would present evidence until denial had nowhere left to stand. Donna Whitmore had given me everything I needed already today. Back home, Grace Palmer waited in her car again, this time with resolve set hard. She didn't speak at first. She handed me a folder and nodded toward Donna Whitmore's house. Inside were copies of minutes, dates circled, warnings ignored. The HOA official had dismissed liability, laughed at insurance, bragged about control. Grace's hands shook as she described standing there, watching the ambulance blocked, hearing Lucas's name called. The tyrant in heels had chosen dominance over decency. Grace chose truth. I told her she wasn't alone anymore. Her daughter's insulin kit sat visible, a reminder of why fear had ruled her silence. Donna Whitmore had cultivated that fear deliberately, methodically, and without remorse for years inside Meadowbrook Commons, alone, unchecked. I filed the complaint the next morning with the district attorney's office, careful and complete. I attached video, logs, timelines, and statements. I named Donna Whitmore, plainly, and cited the statute. The paralegal's past didn't matter. The law did. I requested charges and asked for a review of prior incidents. The clerk didn't blink. She stamped and logged, the sound loud in the quiet room. The board chair had underestimated systems. Outside, cameras rolled past my street already, curiosity gathering. Public exposure doesn't begin with noise. It begins with records. Donna Whitmore's choices would be measured now, not excused by aesthetics. I walked out steady, knowing what would come next, and prepared to face the storm she summoned publicly soon. That evening, I returned to the nursery window and turned off the light. The street reflected back at me, empty and calm, the way Donna Whitmore preferred it. I imagined her reading headlines she hadn't planned, hearing her name spoken with facts attached. The woman who killed my son had relied on silence. Silence was over. I packed copies, set alerts, and called the reporter Grace suggested. When I hung up, the camera blinked red once more. Watching, waiting. I breathed and let the night settle. Tomorrow, the truth would step outside with me. Donna Whitmore would meet daylight, armed with evidence, witnesses, and consequences. I slept briefly, dreaming of sirens finally moving without obstruction, without ego, without delay again. Grace asked me to meet her at the community center parking lot, far from Donna Whitmore's porch lights and closer to neutrality. The board chair liked home field advantage. Grace wanted witnesses and distance. When I arrived, she was already there. Trunk open, a cardboard box resting against the bumper like a confession waiting to be lifted. She didn't greet me with small talk. She handed me the box. "This is everything I kept back," she said, voice steady but thin. "Not copies, originals." Inside were binders and folders, tabs labeled with dates, agendas, and committee names. The clipboard queen had loved structure. Grace had mirrored it quietly. I flipped through pages where warnings were raised and dismissed, liability concerns waved off, and Donna Whitmore's comments underlined in ink. The paralegal had written, "Emergency access must remain controlled to protect presentation." She'd added a smiley face. Grace leaned against her minivan, arms crossed tight. "I watched her block the ambulance," she said. "I heard the paramedics. I heard you." She closed her eyes for a moment. "I went home and checked on Maya. Her sugar was low. I sat there thinking if I spoke up, if I made her angry, Donna could do this to us too. I understood the math. Fear plus authority equals silence. The tyrant in heels had perfected it. Grace opened another folder and slid it toward me. Text messages, emails. One chain singled me out by name. Donna Whitmore wrote that paramedics attracted emergency vehicles and sirens, and that sirens lowered property values. She suggested managing me before things escalated. Grace had replied once, a timid caution. Donna responded with a laugh and a line about knowing the law better than anyone. "When Maya asked me if your baby died because I didn't help," Grace said, eyes shining, "I knew I couldn't keep this." We stood there while traffic passed, normal and loud. I felt the weight of the box and the relief of it. Evidence doesn't erase grief, but it sharpens truth. I thanked her and meant more than the word could carry. Donna Whitmore made her move that night. The HOA official emailed the neighborhood, framing the incident as a misunderstanding and reminding residents about appropriate decorum during investigations. She warned against sharing footage. She threatened fines for misinformation. The enforcer in crimson never stopped pushing. She escalated until resistance cracked or fled. I forwarded Grace's materials to the reporter I'd called. I sent a concise summary to the DA. I logged each file and time-stamped the handoff. Chain of custody. Pattern. Intent. The board chair's confidence had become an exhibit. The next morning, a van parked across from my house. Then another. Cameras set up. Microphones appeared. Donna Whitmore stepped onto her porch in a crisp blazer and spoke about safety and standards. The woman who killed my son performed concern. Behind her, neighbors watched from windows, no longer alone. Grace texted once, "I'm ready to say it out loud." I told her to come to the station when called and to bring Maya's kit. I wanted the truth to arrive human, undeniable. The clipboard queen had built her reign on fear. It would end with names and faces. As the sun dropped behind Meadowbrook Commons, I looked up at the nursery window again. The camera blinked red, faithful. Tomorrow, the footage would meet daylight. Donna Whitmore had relied on private power. Public light was different. It didn't argue, it revealed. The station interview aired at 6. I watched it alone, volume low, notebook open, pen ready. The reporter didn't editorialize. She didn't need to. She played the footage. Donna Whitmore's SUV blocking the cul-de-sac, the board chair refusing to move, the paramedics running, the clock ticking in the corner of the screen, merciless. When the segment ended, the phone began to vibrate and didn't stop. Neighbors called first. Some apologized, some cried, some asked how they could help. Then colleagues, paramedics I'd trained with, supervisors from neighboring counties, union reps who knew obstruction law cold. They spoke in clipped sentences, already thinking about policy, precedent, protection. The enforcer in crimson had triggered a profession. Donna Whitmore responded within the hour. The HOA official released a statement through counsel, careful and hollow. She expressed sympathy while denying responsibility. She blamed confusion. She cited complex traffic considerations. The paralegal's language tried to blur time and choice into fog. It didn't work. The footage cut through every clause. By 9, the clip had crossed state lines. By midnight, it crossed oceans. EMS organizations shared it with captions that didn't soften a thing. Blocking an ambulance is a felony. 8 minutes kills. The tyrant in heels was trending for the wrong reasons. I spent the night doing what I do best. I built a clean packet. Video with verified timestamps, dispatch logs, crew statements, hospital notes confirming delay as a contributing factor. Grace's binders scanned and indexed, a summary written like a charging memo, not a plea. I labeled everything. I saved copies in separate locations. Chain of custody mattered more than anger. At dawn, the district attorney called. She didn't waste words. "We're opening a formal investigation," she said. "Bring what you have." I asked about charges. She said obstruction of emergency services was clear. She said manslaughter would be evaluated. I wrote it down and thanked her. The clipboard queen's choices were being measured by people who understood consequence. Donna Whitmore didn't retreat. She escalated again. The board chair emailed residents, accusing the media of exploitation and warning of legal exposure for sharing footage. She threatened fines. She tried to regain control with the tools she knew. It backfired. Screenshots spread. More neighbors came forward. Tom Chen spoke publicly about the fire truck. Mrs. Patterson's son agreed to be interviewed. The pattern took shape on camera. Grace sat beside me during the second interview, hands folded tight, Maya's insulin kit visible on the table between us. When she spoke, she didn't perform. She stated facts. She described warnings ignored. She described laughter. The woman who killed my son lost the last shield she had, doubt. By afternoon, insurers called the HOA. Coverage was under review. Mortgage companies asked questions. Realtors stopped answering Donna Whitmore's calls. The committee chair stood on her porch again, phone to her ear, pacing. The street watched back. Power had shifted. I stepped outside beneath the nursery window and felt the heat of cameras across the road. I didn't address them yet. I looked up at the red blink and nodded once. The watchful eye had done its part. Now the system was awake. That evening, the DA's office confirmed receipt of the full packet. A case number followed. The words felt unreal and solid at the same time. I closed the laptop and let the quiet in. The truth was out. The pressure was building. Donna Whitmore had chosen a fight with daylight, evidence, and a profession that never forgets 8 minutes. By morning, Meadowbrook Commons didn't recognize itself. News vans lined the curb where kids once biked in circles, cables snaking across lawns Donna Whitmore used to measure for violations. The board chair stayed inside, curtains drawn, while microphones waited. I watched from my driveway as reporters rehearsed lines that included my son's name and the phrase, blocked ambulance. The words felt heavy, necessary. I went to the district attorney's office with a single folder and a clear head. The assistant DA listened without interruption. I laid out the timeline. Arrival, refusal, delay, outcome. I showed the footage, then the logs, then the statements. I didn't editorialize. I didn't cry. When she asked about prior incidents, I slid Grace's materials across the table. The paralegal's boasts stared back in ink. Intent mattered. Pattern mattered. 8 minutes mattered most. Outside, cameras caught Donna Whitmore leaving her house for the first time in days, flanked by counsel. The HOA official read a statement blaming confusion and grief. The enforcer in crimson refused questions. The footage played beside her face on every screen. She stopped smiling. By afternoon, the DA announced charges under review. Obstruction of emergency services was confirmed. Manslaughter would be presented to a grand jury. I felt no relief, only alignment. The system was moving at the speed it moves, not the speed grief demands. That was fine. I'd waited 8 minutes already. Donna Whitmore escalated again. The committee chair sent a cease and desist to neighbors, warning against defamatory sharing. Screenshots spread faster than fear. Tom Chen stood with a reporter and described smoke filling his kitchen while a fire truck idled. Mrs. Patterson's son spoke slowly, carefully, and told the story of a stroke delayed. The tyrant in heels had built a pattern. Daylight filled it in. At dusk, I recorded a short statement on my phone. 30 seconds. No music, no edits. Just the footage, a caption, and the truth. An HOA official blocked my son's ambulance, I said. He died. This is the video. I posted it and set the phone down. I didn't watch the numbers climb. I didn't need to. When I stepped outside, the street was quiet again. A neighbor stood at the end of the drive and nodded, a small human gesture that felt enormous. I looked up at the nursery window. The red camera light blinked, steady. That night, the DA called back. "We're moving forward," she said. "Be available." I told her I would be. After I hung up, I sat beneath the window and wrote one more note. Time the video went public. Exposure wasn't revenge. It was oxygen. It let truth breathe. Across the street, a light flicked on. Donna Whitmore paced behind glass, phone pressed to her ear, voice muffled. The woman who killed my son had lost the only thing she'd ever truly controlled. The narrative. The street listened now. The country listened. And tomorrow, the law would speak. The pressure didn't build all at once. It stacked. One call, then another. A statement, then a correction. By noon, Meadowbrook Commons felt smaller, like the walls were closing in on the story Donna Whitmore tried to outrun. The board chair's porch stayed empty while reporters paced, checking phones, waiting for the next development. I stayed inside, blinds half drawn, listening to the neighborhood breathe differently. The district attorney held a brief press conference. No theatrics, just facts. Obstruction of emergency services, review of additional charges. Timeline confirmed. Questions deflected to the record. The enforcer in crimson wasn't named on the microphone, but her name scrolled on every Chiron anyway. The footage did the speaking. It always had. Donna Whitmore's attorney released another statement, tighter this time, stripped of sympathy. The HOA official denied intent and blamed confusion, training gaps, miscommunication. The paralegal's words sounded careful and hollow, like legal language pressed over a wound. Within minutes, EMS associations responded publicly. Confusion doesn't park sideways. Miscommunication doesn't last 8 minutes. Training gaps don't laugh on camera. Insurance followed law. The HOA's carrier announced a review, then a suspension. Lenders called the board. A special meeting was scheduled and canceled within the hour. Neighbors gathered in small knots, voices low but urgent. The tyrant in heels had ruled by fear. Fear evaporates when consequences show up with cameras. Grace called once, then texted. "They asked me to come in," she wrote. "I'm going." I told her I'd be there if she needed me. I didn't add anything else. She knew what this cost. She also knew what it meant. By evening, national outlets picked it up. The story didn't grow. It clarified. An HOA official blocked an ambulance. A child died. Evidence existed. Accountability followed. The pattern surfaced as others spoke. A fire truck, a stroke, a parade of near misses that no longer hid behind hedges and bylaws. The clipboard queen's history became context, not excuse. I stepped onto the porch as lights flared across the street. Someone asked if I wanted to speak. I shook my head. Not yet. I watched Donna Whitmore's house instead. The blinds moved. A shadow crossed. The committee chair was there, listening to her world change. A message arrived from the DA's office. Grand jury scheduled. Warrant application underway pending review. I read it twice, then set the phone down. The words felt heavy but right. Justice doesn't rush, but it doesn't sleep forever either. Later, I walked the cul-de-sac alone. Leaves scraped along the pavement. The place looked ordinary again, and that hurt more than the noise. I stopped beneath the nursery window and looked up at the camera, the red blink steady as a pulse. The watchful eye had become the spine of the case. Donna Whitmore had tried to control sightlines. She'd forgotten about memory. Across the way, a door opened. The HOA official stepped out with a bag, moving quickly, eyes down. The enforcer in crimson didn't wave. She didn't look over. A car pulled up, engine idling. She got in and left. Not arrested yet, not finished, but moving without permission now, without certainty. I went back inside and packed copies into a single folder. Video, logs, statements, notes. I labeled it for tomorrow. The pressure would continue. The system would tighten. And when the moment came, it wouldn't be loud. It would be procedural. Donna Whitmore had built her power on procedure. It would end the same way. The arrest happened in the early afternoon, the time of day Donna Whitmore preferred for control. Schedules, meetings, inspections, procedure. It was fitting that procedure finally found her. I was standing in the living room when the unmarked cars rolled into Meadowbrook Commons. No sirens, no rush, just doors opening and closing with purpose. The board chair's front door was still shut when officers stepped onto her lawn. Cameras followed at a respectful distance, lenses trained on a house that had hidden behind hedges and rules for years. Donna Whitmore opened the door in a crisp jacket, phone already in hand. The HOA official tried to speak first. She always did. The enforcer in crimson began explaining before anyone asked. Confusion, misunderstanding, standards. The words slid off the officers like rain. One of them read the charges calmly. Felony obstruction of emergency services. Additional counts pending. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. The tyrant in heels froze. For the first time since I'd known her, Donna Whitmore didn't know what to say. Handcuffs clicked softly. The sound carried farther than shouting ever could. The clipboard queen's posture collapsed inward as neighbors gathered, silent and stunned. Phones came up, not gleeful, not cruel, just documenting what accountability looks like when it finally arrives. I stood on my porch and watched. I didn't step closer. I didn't step away. The woman who killed my son was guided down the steps she'd used to lecture others. Her eyes flicked once toward my house, then away. She didn't look at the nursery window. She didn't look at the camera. At the courthouse, the air felt cooler. The DA presented the timeline. The footage played. 8 minutes expanded into something undeniable. Paramedics testified to protocol and panic. The hospital physician explained contributing factors without emotion. The judge listened, hands folded, eyes steady. Bail was addressed quickly. The DA cited recklessness, pattern, and risk. The judge denied reduction. The words landed clean and final. Donna Whitmore sat very still, the paralegal's confidence drained by process she could no longer bend. Outside, the civil case moved in parallel. Wrongful death, negligence, liability. The HOA's insurer withdrew coverage before lunch. A special assessment notice hit inboxes by evening. Neighbors were furious, not at me, but at years of fear they'd tolerated. A meeting was called and dissolved within hours. Votes were counted. Donna's allies vanished. Grace stood beside me on the courthouse steps, Maya's insulin kit slung over her shoulder like a badge. She didn't speak to cameras. She didn't have to. Her presence said enough. The board chair's reign ended with witnesses standing upright. That night, Meadowbrook Commons was quiet again. No vans, no shouting, just the sound of wind in trees Donna Whitmore had once measured for compliance. I walked the cul-de-sac alone and stopped beneath the nursery window. The camera blinked red, steady as ever. I thought about the first responders who ran when they shouldn't have had to. I thought about neighbors who'd waited too long to speak. I thought about a system that works only when light is forced into it. Donna Whitmore had built her authority on fear and procedure. She lost it to evidence and daylight. Tomorrow, the sentencing schedule would be set. Appeals would come. Civil numbers would harden. None of that would bring Lucas back. But it would stop the next 8 minutes from being stolen. I went inside and turned off the light beneath the window. The watchful eye kept blinking. Some truths don't sleep. 6 months later, the plea was entered without drama. Donna Whitmore stood, pale and rigid, and answered yes to questions she once mocked. The board chair accepted 3 years in prison, 5 on probation, restitution ordered, and a permanent ban from HOA leadership. The enforcer in crimson avoided my eyes. The clipboard queen finally learned procedure cuts both ways. Civil court followed. Numbers replaced outrage. The judgment landed heavy and precise, enough to force a reckoning. The HOA dissolved, insurance gone, assessments rescinded, rules rewritten by neighbors who refused fear. Meadowbrook Commons changed quietly, the way healthy things do after infection is treated. The state changed too. Legislators held hearings, EMS chiefs testified. The footage played again, this time to shape law instead of headlines. Lucas's law passed with margins no one expected, carving emergency access into statute so no committee chair could argue aesthetics over breath again. I watched from the gallery and felt the promise to Sarah settle into something solid. Donna Whitmore transferred facilities after intake. The tyrant in heels would spend her days serving community hours with EMS organizations when release came, learning what 8 minutes costs. I didn't attend the sentencing beyond what was required. Justice doesn't need witnesses to work, only records. I returned to work slowly. The first call back was a child with a racing heart. We moved fast, roads clear, neighbors stepping aside, sirens cut through without resistance. The child lived. I sat in the rig afterward and let my hands shake until they didn't. Grace became HOA president by vote, not fear. She wrote emergency access into the bylaws and posted them publicly. Maya helped plant a tree in the small garden near the cul-de-sac, a place neighbors pass every day. We named it for Lucas. The nursery window still faces the street, camera blinking red, a watchful eye that earned rest but keeps it anyway. I don't hate Donna Whitmore. Hate burns energy I used to teach, to train, to document. I do remember what happened, exactly, because memory protects, evidence protects, light protects. Donna Whitmore wrote letters from custody through counsel, insisting she meant no harm, citing standards and intent as if repetition could rewrite tape. The committee chair asked for forgiveness without naming the act. The HOA official apologized to a concept, not a child. I read them once and filed them away, because patterns matter more than promises. The enforcer in crimson learned what escalation costs when authority meets consequence. I learned something quieter. Communities heal when boundaries are explicit and enforced. Training resumed across the county. Dispatchers updated protocols. Officers rehearsed responses to interference. Cameras stayed on. Neighbors practiced stepping aside, not standing in the way. Meadowbrook Commons became ordinary again, and ordinary felt like mercy. Each small change traced back to evidence, to minutes, to 8 stolen minutes returned by law and memory. Donna Whitmore's name remains a warning, not a myth, a reminder that power without empathy corrodes quickly, and documentation turns grief into guardrails for everyone across communities and courts alike. If you're watching this and wondering whether speaking up matters, it does. If you've ever been told rules can't bend for life, they can and must. If you want more stories of families standing up to authority that forgets humanity, subscribe and share where you're watching from. Your voice widens the light. At dusk, I stand beneath the window and wave out of habit. The street is clear. Sirens pass freely. 8 minutes are returned to the people who need them most. That is Lucas's legacy. That is how this ends.